League of Legends is 16 years old. If you played the game when it first came out and you know anyone younger than that, congrats my friend, you're a boomer. Very few titles have the privilege of saying they've been around for that long. Most would have faded into obscurity or ended their service well before the halfway mark. But even to this day, League is still one of the household names in the gaming industry, and though it has been declining in player base and reputation over the past couple of years, it's far from disappearing off the face of the earth anytime soon. Having such an extensive history with the game and my penchant for talking about the good old days, I wanted to make a video looking back through it all and take a look at some gameplay features that I and hopefully many of you feel nostalgic about. League was a hot mess back in the day, but in a way that's what made it so charming. The present day League feels almost too sterilized that it feels kinda predictable and boring, which might explain why people love talking about the good old days so much. This was put together with the help of you guys in my community poll, so it's gonna be a mixture of my own things as well as some of yours. Let's get into it. Throughout 2015 to I would say maybe 2019, there was a pretty noteworthy part of the community who enjoyed making mods for the game. No, not cheating or hacking mods like scripts and whatnot, purely cosmetic stuff. One of the most enjoyable parts of the game back then was how people could download and install custom skins for the game to suit whatever you wanted. Like with most cosmetics, you could pretty much find a reskin for everything, but the two parts of the game that were most enjoyable to mod would definitely have to be Summoner's Rift and Champion skins. People went out of their way to redesign the map to have a completely different look. The most popular one based on memory was that you could actually superimpose the old Summoner's Rift appearance to the game, making it feel like you were still playing pre-2014 League since the structure was still the exact same. They even brought back all the old jungle camps too, so Gromp would go back to looking like a white, or Raptors would go back to looking like Wraiths and stuff. It was pretty cool. You can also find custom skins of a certain theme. It's hard to find them nowadays because I believe most of the websites where you could download them got nuked, but essentially people brought in Howling Abyss to Summoner's Rift, or they even made a beach map, basically reskinning the lanes to be sandy and whatnot. I believe someone made a project-themed rift at one point. I also distinctly remember there was a blood-themed Halloween rift. Skins in general were a lot of fun to see because they weren't really a thing back then. I know nowadays Riot's doing the lore rifts like how we have Ionia and before we had Noxus, or on some occasions they made an official map skin like the Arcane Rift, but the vibe was just different back then. I can't put my finger on why. I think the biggest one people missed was the Winter Rift. Completely superfluous, but it was a nice touch on how during the winter months the entire rift would be covered in a blanket of snow and even have that fun little Winter Rift jingle music in the background. Oh, and speaking of which, there used to be custom voice and music packs too. Honestly, custom cosmetics in general, people made all sorts of dumb stuff like wheelchair Yasuo and stuff. Actually, a long time ago, Kashawa used to make skin montages where you would have like Optimus Prime Gallia, or Infernape Wukong, or Quarterback Sion. It was so derpy to watch, but it was an integral part of the game's culture throughout the 2010s. For some reason, Riot began to crack down on using custom skins because technically it's a violation of intellectual property, much like how Nintendo doesn't want us to homebrew Switches and stuff even if it's purely meant for personal use and doesn't hurt anyone. I'm pretty sure you can still mod your stuff and whatnot, but ever since like 2020, they publicly said if we catch you doing this, you're gonna get banned. Then they made it almost impossible for us to mod our game because now we have to deal with Vanguard. So unfortunately, I think it's safe to say mods are over and done with. To this day though, I don't know why they took them away though. It's not like they were hurting the game. If anything, it made the game more fun and memeable. Someone made a Naruto mod for Zed and every time you used W, it would make like the Shadow Clone Jutsu pooping sound. It was honestly pretty cool. But I guess now that's a part of history. Going from a super big part of the game to a really small part of the game, but in my opinion, it was a tiny detail with a lot of meaning to it. Mana potions. I miss mana potions. I can sort of get why they took them out though, but mana potions are one of the things people think about the most. That and by extension Crystalline Flask or later Corrupting Potion. Again, I understand why Riot took them out. They were a major beginner's trap for inexperienced players as they would waste a ton of gold buying 5 health and 5 mana pots and continuously restock on them thinking League was like an RPG where you'd want to keep your recovery items topped off. Not that that was a bad thing per se, but because potions didn't scale over time and only offered a flat amount, all they were doing was wasting inventory space and precious gold. It basically just taught players the wrong priorities. On the other end of things, mana potions were incredibly overpowered when used correctly. A significant number of champions in this game are balanced around finite resources. Their limited mana supply, especially in the early game, is intended to keep their power level in check, at least until you buy your first mana item or two. Mana potions and the Crystalline Flask effectively circumvented that by giving certain champions more lane endurance than they were supposed to have. Auto-attack based champions like ADCs are kept in check by the fact that they don't have the attack speed and crit chance to fire like a machine gun yet. But for ability champions, the only things balancing them are cooldown reduction and mana. Bypassing the latter behaved like a superficial power spike, which is why they had to take away Mana Potion and then nerf Corrupting Potion before taking it out altogether. I'm also fairly certain Crystalline Flask and Corrupting Potion were statistically proven to be more gold efficient than any other starting item in the game, on account of them refilling every time you recalled, which means a lot more than people think. I know most champions are gradually balanced around not needing to rely on mana potions or even blue buff anymore, but it's one of those things that used to be such an integral part of the game back in the day despite how seemingly insignificant it appeared to be. That and buying green wards. This one's a classic, stackable items. Nowadays you're only able to buy one copy of each item and no more than that. Even before that though, they made efforts to ensure you couldn't buy multiple copies of a certain type of item so as to prevent breaking things too hard, like how you could only buy one last whisper item, either LDR or Mortal Reminder, never both. Understandable seeing as they didn't want you to have 75% armor pen on every hit. That said, being able to stack items allowed for some very hilarious builds. For example, Evelyn used to have invisibility, not camouflage, as in she could be standing right next to you and not be visible. So what a lot of players used to do as a fun little cheese option was, and I'm not even kidding, build a full inventory of Sunfire Keeps and literally just walk up next to someone while invisible and watch them slowly burn to death. Most don't really consider Sunfire Aegis to be a particularly threatening item in light of how long they would have to stand next to you for the dot damage to actually matter. But what if you had 6 of them? Suddenly enemies would be taking 200 burn damage a second and have no idea what the hell was hitting them. Another more widespread example of stacking items was the infamous Black Cleaver meta. On top of having solid gold efficiency and a good balance of health, attack damage, armor penetration, yes, it used to have built-in lethality back when it was actual armor pen, and cooldown reduction, buying multiple copies of it allowed you to double up on the armor shred stacks, meaning at 5 black cleavers, a single auto attack applied all 5 stacks to a target. Conceptually, the main thing balancing Black Cleaver is the time it takes to get to the full count, making it more suitable for sustained combat, not really for front-loaded burst damage. Back when it used to stack though, you could one-shot someone thanks to the automatic full stack in conjunction with the flat armor pen the item used to contain from having Brutalizer as a component. AD casters like Pantheon and whatnot had a fantastic time abusing this. Another heavy hitter was an oldie but goodie, Atmos. It was a build consisting of 1 Atmos Impaler and 5 Warmogs. For those unaware, Atmos Impaler is essentially the spiritual predecessor to Overlord's Bloodmail, where it would give you bonus attack damage equal to a portion of your health, only instead of bonus health it was max health. You might be wondering how come Atmos was so broken back then but not the HP scaling items now. For one, Atmos was one of the most cost-effective items in the game for how cheap it was to build, especially given that Avarice Blade supplemented your gold generation until that point, and it gave armor and crit chance, an unusual stat pair but one that proved especially deadly when you had a champion with over 5000 HP. At its peak, Atmos gave 65 armor and 25% crit chance for I believe only about 2500 gold, which is insane if you think about it. Then if you had say 7000 HP late game with a 2% HP conversion, basically any champion could turn into Mundo. You were incredibly tanky from the HP and armor while doing some very serious damage, and remember this was back when percent health damage wasn't as abundant as it is right now, so tank busting was exceedingly harder back then. A modern day Mundo could 1v9 2010 League of Legends, which kinda goes to show you how far we've come in relative power creep. At the end of the day, stacking items was an unintentional oversight, but it was a really fun part of the game. Building 6 Infinity Edges, 6 Black Cleavers, 6 of anything really, was so stupid it actually worked. I'm pretty sure you could even go 6 Ravenous Hydras and just ultra lifesteal everything with old Fiora, although I might be misremembering it. To a lesser extent, you could even stack Doran items. People legitimately would run like triple Doran Blade or triple Doran Ring because the stats were good enough to offset them not building into anything. Some AD carries even went 6 Doran Blades. It was a viable strategy. Okay, hi, so this is real life Vars for just a moment. No, don't you dare in the comments, guys. Don't give me the whole like old face reveal one thing, okay? We've been through this, alright? Anyways, sorry for the brief interruption. So basically, I just want to kind of preface the next part of the video, or kind of like the rest of the video actually, in that about like a day after I made the script and I edited and recorded and everything, I gave it to my editor to work on the actual video. Riot went and did 2 things actually. They added Doombots back to the game, which had to have been the most like coincidental comedic timing of all like in history. I make a video talking about how I miss Doombots, and then they go ahead and make Doombots like the day after I made the video. And they're bringing back Winter Rift. So if you're wondering why I mention it in this video, it's because I made the video like a day before they brought Doombots back in its modern iteration. So I hope that doesn't impact the rest of the video. Hope you can enjoy it nonetheless. But yeah, just that's pretty awkward. So anyways, enjoy the rest of the video. I'll see you guys whenever the next time I record my face on. Okay, this one's a personal favorite of mine. Just like how the winter map signaled the holiday season of League, Riot would also add in seasonal game modes from time to time, and the one to celebrate Halloween was Doombots. Doombots of Doom, or Doombots for short, was a cult versus AI game mode with a fun little twist. The enemy champions were jacked up to high heaven. Basically, they made the enemy AI team so ridiculously overpowered the goal was not to win the game, but rather to survive for as long as you possibly could. I'm not joking, they found a way to make fighting CPU champions actually fun. Not only did Doombots have an enormous stat advantage over you, they also had custom ability modifications that made it so even CPUs could tear through challenger players by brute force. Here are some examples of what they did. Amumu's W made all minions have it too. Annie's W shot in all directions and she summoned a fresh Tibbers upon dying with the summon damage and all. If Brand's W hit a champion, it would create even more Ws around the point of impact. Blitzcrank W was permanently active. Fiddlesticks could drain all targets around him. Remember, this was back in 2016 before he got reworked. He also had a 360-degree wind wall and had multiple tornado Qs come out in all directions. Malzahar spawned a billion Voidlings. Veigar would turbo rain dark matter on you. This freaking game mode was so cursed it was actually so much fun, and at higher difficulties, enemy Doombots would start carrying abilities of other Doombots. You would find a Veigar tossing out a Yasuo Q or an Annie with the Lux ultimate. I'm fairly positive the highest difficulty Doombots were impossible to clear during the first iteration. When it came back in 2016, in order for you to win, you had to hold out for 15 minutes and then a giant devil Teemo would spawn and make a beeline towards your Nexus. If you could kill it, you would win. If you could kill it. This was the first ever PvE game mode I believe, and to this day, in my opinion, it was the most enjoyable one. They haven't brought it back since, which is kind of a shame because it definitely fit the spooky vibe of Halloween every year. On that note, I kind of missed the passage of time throughout the game. Whenever summer came around, Riot would do something summer themed like the pool party skins. When Halloween came out, there were Doombots. When Christmas rolled around, they would make a Christmas skin and bring us the Winter Rift. They used to do seasonal content over the years, but now I feel like they just don't do that anymore. That might explain why League doesn't feel as meaningful to a lot of players. Last one I want to talk about, and I've brought this up many times in the past, I miss gimmicky items. I'm not talking about items with a niche purpose like Strikebreaker or Hextech Rocket Belt. I'm talking items that have nothing to do with champions and you would build it for shits and giggles. Stuff like CC Raw Portal and Banner of Command. Though small in quantity, there used to be random items in the game that gave you a questionable assortment of stats, but offered some very interesting actives to them that on occasion would make them really handy at times. I miss CC Raw Portal the most. It was such a stupid item, but extremely helpful for the purposes of macro. The little voidlings that spawned from it were actually good enough to pose a threat if left unchecked. When using CC Rod against a tower, they would chunk it for a decent amount of health, like 10% per successful one, and they could even be strong enough to bottleneck super minions, or at the very least freeze the wave. Multiple CC rods would be a significant threat for sieging too, since you could place them decently far away and slowly chip at the enemy base. Banner of Command was an altogether different beast, empowering a minion to basically be on the same level of a super. I remember watching videos of teams building multiple banners and empowering an entire wave to run it down mid and make a push for a game. A crazy strategy, but it actually worked, especially if you coordinated with your team to catch people off guard. You know, as I'm writing this, I think I've come to realize what made League so special back in the day. Even though you can argue the game was a complete mess, that messiness made the game fun and memorable. People goofed off and tried unusual strategies or added their own personalities to the game in the form of skins. They were able to try absurd strategies of stacking multiple copies of an item and seeing if it worked. Even in regards to the silly whimsical game modes that we used to get like Doombots, Riot wasn't so focused on trying to polish or clean up the game like they are now. A while back I remember a tweet that Minbeast made where he remarked on how sterilized the game has become, how things have become too predictable and too by the book, that there's no room for people to do stupid stuff like they used to before. And I confess, I agree with them. League was a dumpster fire, but that was the charm of it. I think that's why people miss mythic items. Balance-wise, mythic items were ridiculous, but that's what made the game enjoyable. It was unpredictable, you never knew what would happen. But in recent times, the game feels too predictable and too balanced, at least in relation to how chaotic things were back in the day. What do you guys think? What are some things about the old League that you really miss? You're welcome to share them in the comments down below. As always, if you enjoyed the video, I'd appreciate it if you left a like and subscribed. Don't forget to follow me on Twitter at Vars, join my Discord server, and check out my other League discussion videos if you haven't yet. But till next time, thanks so much for watching, and I look forward to seeing you again soon. Take care.